Hello out there, Faith Bridge friends and family. This is Pastor Ben here with you today, and I'm excited to be with you. First, I want to give you a pop quiz. So, the first person that can identify where I am, I'll give you a hint. It's somewhere on the Faith Bridge campus, but you have to be really precisely specific as to that location. I'll give you a prize. Maybe it'll be Faith Bridge swag or something. I'll figure it out. So comment in the comment section where you think I'm standing currently. I can't wait to hear from you. I'm glad and I'm thankful that you have tuned in. I'm excited that you've tuned in because I've got some kind of maybe incoherent thoughts that are rambling around in my head. And I'm excited to be able to share those with you. And I hope that they come out in a coherent way. So this past week in worship, as we are journeying through Acts, as a church, we made our way to the end of Acts chapter 2, where the apostles had to figure out what to do with all these converts, these brand new converts to Christianity. They go from about 100 or so to a group of 3,000. What do you do with all these people? And so they figured out how to have church with that many people. And the only way they could do that was to meet in various locations. Right? So they would meet in people's homes in smaller groups. They would meet in the temple at sometimes. And we'll see this as we make our way through Acts, these different places that they were meeting. They would meet in homes, in the temple. They would meet in the town square. They would meet in the jail. All these places any place they could find to gather people together for worship. And I continue to be amazed about the ways that this pandemic has kind of caused us to go back to that model of church, right? Because we can't gather in mass anymore indoors. So we're having to figure out, well, where can we meet? Can we meet outdoors? Can we meet in people's houses in smaller groups? Perhaps just like what the early church did. And what it's doing for us, which excites me, honestly, I'm truly excited about this, is that it allows us to realize and become less dependent on church as a building and a refocus on church as to wherever God's people are gathered. What it means is that we can worship God wherever we are. And we're starting to realize that. Again, we've always said that, but this pandemic has forced us into that realization. Paul says in Romans 12, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Our very bodies are an act of worship. When we acknowledge that we are created in the very image of God, in the image of a God who loves us and calls us a child of God, then our bodies become that act of worship before God, which means, friends, we can worship God wherever and whenever we are. Last year we did a church-wide study, The Liturgy of the Ordinary, by Tish Harrison Warren. And she says this in the book: the bodies we use in our worship service each week are the same bodies we take to our kitchen table, into our bathtubs, and under our covers at night. We don't have to just worship in a place or a space or a church, because our bodies are that act of worship because God designed us and created us and loves us. So let me just encourage you this week to start to incorporate some of those worship practices into your everyday life. And I don't mean like you have to preach to your family. If that's your thing, go for it. But more the ordinary things that you do, the mundane things that you do, and remembering that as you use your bodies to do those things, that you are reflecting God's image back to God and back to the world, and remembering that you're loved. So here's a couple of examples. So when you're in the shower and the water's coming over you, you can remember your baptism and be thankful to God. When you're gathered around a table enjoying a meal, you can remember Christ gathering his disciples around a table and giving thanks to God for the meal and for that gift of food and fellowship if you're with your family. Or perhaps when you're at work, you're using your body and being reflective of your body as the gifts that God has given you, and remembering that God has gifted you to do exactly what you're doing and giving thanks to God, and let that be your act of worship. Or when you're brushing your teeth, as Tish Harrison Warren suggests, looking in the mirror and taking a moment and seeing and noticing that reflection and knowing that you are, in fact, a child of God. Seeing yourself as the beloved child of God God created you to be, and that becomes your act of worship. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. Tell me some of the ways in your life that you, as Paul encourages us to do, you're using your body as an act of worship, your own spiritual act of worship in the mundane, and remembering that we can worship God wherever and whenever we are, and be thankful for that. Friends, know that you are indeed